What if the reason your life isn't moving forward is because nothing is going wrong? You wake up on time, you answer emails, you stay responsible, you clear tasks. From the outside, it looks like discipline. But here's the strange part. The more stable your life becomes, the less your results react. No collapse, no crisis, no warning, just busy days that quietly go nowhere. This isn't about laziness, it's about a pattern that traps capable, disciplined people inside maintenance mode. And once you see how that pattern works, you won't look at productivity the same way again. You wake up at a normal hour, not too early, not too late. You check your phone before your feet hit the floor. A few emails, a couple of notifications, nothing dramatic, nothing urgent, just small things waiting for you. You get up, start the coffee, maybe scroll for a few more minutes while it brews. You look at the calendar, meetings, tasks, a few follow-ups you meant to handle yesterday. By the time the day really begins, you're already in motion. You answer messages, you clear small requests, you fix things that broke overnight. You reply to someone who's just checking in. You move a deadline. You push one uncomfortable task to tomorrow. None of this feels wrong. In fact, it feels responsible. You're working. You're showing up. You're staying on top of things. If someone looked at your day from the outside, it would look full. It would look productive. But when evening comes and you sit down for a minute, something feels strangely unchanged. The day moved. You were busy, but nothing really moved forward. You tell yourself, it's just one day. Tomorrow will be better. The next morning looks almost the same. More messages, more small fires, more tiny adjustments. You spend hours solving problems that weren't even yours at the start of the week. You attend meetings that require your presence, but not your direction. You say yes to things because saying no would take longer to explain. You're not lazy, you're not careless. You're doing what's expected, and still your bigger plans sit untouched. There's a proposal you've been meaning to outline, a conversation you've been postponing, an idea that needs 2 quiet hours you never seem to have. Instead, the day fills itself, and here's the strange part. Nothing appears broken. Your job is stable. Your relationships are intact. Your routine works. From the outside, this is what being responsible looks like. You're not in crisis. You're not failing. You're not falling behind in any obvious way. If anything, you're dependable. But week after week, the same pattern repeats. You work hard. You stay occupied. You handle what shows up. And the larger things, the ones that could actually shift the direction of your life, remain slightly out of reach. Not dramatically. Just slightly. Your income might be steady, your effort is real, but the results don't expand. It doesn't feel like a problem. Not exactly. It feels normal, and that's what makes it easy to ignore, because nothing crashes, nothing collapses. There's no loud warning signal, no sudden loss, no clear mistake, just days that look full, weeks that look responsible, months that pass. At some point, you start to sense something subtle, not a crisis, not even dissatisfaction, just a quiet suspicion that the energy you're spending isn't fully converting into forward movement. But it's hard to name. After all, you're doing everything right, and that's where this pattern begins. The day doesn't fall apart, it just fills up. You open your laptop with one clear intention. There's something specific you meant to move forward today, something that actually matters. But before you can begin, there's a message waiting. It looks quick. You answer it, then another one. Slightly more complicated, you handle that too. Someone sends a link, you skim it. It feels relevant. You save it for later, but you read just enough to break your focus. By the time you return to the task you originally planned to start, the clean block of time you imagined is gone. So you adjust. You tell yourself you'll begin after lunch. After lunch you feel slightly heavier. Not tired exactly, just less sharp. You check your inbox again. There's movement there, small wins, quick responses, things you can close in 5 minutes. 5-minute tasks feel efficient. They feel productive. They give you a small sense of completion. The larger task, though, doesn't offer that. It requires depth. It asks for sustained attention. It won't reward you immediately. So it waits. You don't avoid it dramatically. You don't decide not to do it. You simply postpone it. Gently, reasonably, almost intelligently. Tomorrow morning will be better. This is how small delays enter your routine, not through fear, not through laziness, through logic. You prioritize what's visible, what's pressing, what other people are waiting on. And because you're responsive, people trust you. They rely on you. They send you more. Your day becomes a series of reactions. Nothing feels out of control. In fact, you might even feel organized. You're clearing items, you're answering fast, you're available. But the work that changes direction, the kind that requires stepping away from incoming noise, keeps slipping to the edge of the calendar. Weeks pass like this. The proposal remains in draft form. The outreach email stays unsent. The skill you meant to practice gets postponed to when things calm down. Things don't calm down, they stabilize. And stabilization feels safe. There's a quiet comfort in knowing what your day will look like. You wake up, you respond, you manage, you close loops. You rarely experience sharp stress, but you also rarely experience meaningful traction. Working hard without progress doesn't feel dramatic, it feels steady. That's the subtle shift. You become efficient at maintenance. You maintain relationships. You maintain workflows. You maintain expectations. You maintain your position. And because nothing is falling apart, you assume everything is fine. But maintenance has a hidden cost. When you constantly delay deeper moves, momentum doesn't just pause, it slowly dissolves. Not in a way you can measure day by day, more in the way a season changes without you noticing the exact moment it turned. A year can pass inside small delays, and if someone asked you what went wrong, you wouldn't have an answer. You were busy the whole time. The pattern still doesn't look dangerous. It looks responsible. It looks adult. It looks like staying on top of life, and yet something important continues to move just slightly further away. Not because you can't reach it, but because you keep choosing what's closer. The full weight of that choice doesn't show up immediately, it accumulates quietly. At some point, people begin to describe you the same way. Dependable, responsive, easy to work with. You reply quickly, you show up prepared, you rarely drop the ball, and that reputation feels good. It feels earned. When something needs to be handled, your name comes up. When there's confusion, you help clarify. When a deadline is close, you adjust your schedule and make it work. You don't complain about it, you adapt. Over time, this becomes your role. You're the steady one. But steady has a side effect. The more reliable you are, the more requests come your way. Not because people are trying to overwhelm you, but because you've proven you can handle it. So you handle it. You take on one more project. You agree to review something real quick. You join a meeting that technically doesn't require you, but it's easier to attend than to push back. Each decision feels small, mature, cooperative. And because you're capable, you manage to absorb the extra weight without visible strain. Nothing crashes, but something shifts. The work you do becomes increasingly centered around preserving stability rather than creating movement. You're smoothing edges, you're keeping systems running, you're making sure nothing slips. You become excellent at preventing problems, yet the kind of work that stretches you, the kind that changes your trajectory, requires space you no longer protect. It's hard to notice when this happens. From the outside, your performance looks strong. Your schedule is full. Your effort is visible. If someone asked how things are going, you'd probably say, busy but good. And in a way, that's true. But busy and good can exist at the same time as stalled. You start ending your weeks with the same quiet sentence in your head, I did a lot. But what actually moved? Not in a dramatic way. Not with frustration, just observation. You worked hard. Your effort didn't convert into something larger. Your income may still be steady, your position secure, your routine intact. But the gap between activity and advancement widens just enough to feel, if you sit still long enough to notice it. Most people don't sit still long enough. They keep going. Being reliable feels safer than being directional. It keeps relationships smooth. It keeps feedback positive. It keeps risk low. But reliability, when it isn't paired with intention, slowly turns into containment. You become the person who keeps things stable, while others, sometimes less capable but more protective of their time, move forward in visible ways. That comparison doesn't always show up consciously. It just lingers in the background. Years can pass like this, not in failure, in consistency, and consistency feels respectable. But there's a cost to years spent maintaining rather than moving. Even if nothing appears wrong, the pattern is still subtle, you're still functioning well, nothing looks broken, which is exactly why it continues. There's a moment, and it doesn't feel dramatic, when your work stops being about building something and starts being about keeping something. You don't decide this consciously, it just happens. In the beginning, you were reaching. You were learning. You were trying things that felt slightly uncomfortable. Your days had friction, not chaos, friction. You were pushing against edges. There was uncertainty. There was movement. Now, the edges are familiar. You know how to solve most of the problems that show up. You've seen the patterns before. The emails sound the same. The meetings follow predictable scripts. You can almost anticipate what people will say before they say it. That competence feels good, but competence changes the texture of effort. Instead of stretching, you're repeating. Instead of experimenting, you're optimizing. Instead of building, you're preserving. Your calendar fills with things that protect what already exists. You maintain client relationships, you maintain team stability, you maintain your reputation. Maintenance doesn't feel heavy, it feels manageable. And because it's manageable, you rarely question it. But here's the quiet shift. When effort becomes maintenance, growth slows down without announcing itself. You still work long hours, you still care, you still try, but the ceiling stops rising. The work no longer challenges you in a way that forces expansion. It asks for endurance instead. At first, that feels like maturity. You're no longer scrambling. You're steady, you're consistent, you're predictable in a way people appreciate. But predictable work produces predictable outcomes, and predictable outcomes rarely surprise you on the upside. You start to notice that your weeks blend together. Monday looks like last Monday. The same types of conversations, the same types of decisions. You become efficient at navigating a structure that hasn't meaningfully changed in years. That efficiency can hide a deeper cost. When you stop protecting time for work that feels uncertain, work that could fail, you also stop giving yourself the chance to create something that shifts your direction. Maintenance doesn't demand courage, it demands stamina. And stamina is easier to sustain. There's no obvious warning sign here, no sudden drop, no clear mistake, just a quiet flattening. Results no longer respond the way they once did. You can increase effort, increase hours, increase responsiveness, and the outcome barely moves. Not worse, just flat. Effort not converting into results doesn't usually feel like a crisis. It feels like a plateau. And plateaus are comfortable enough to stay on for a long time, especially when everything still looks fine from the outside, especially when nothing forces you to change. This is where the pattern deepens, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you've gotten very good at keeping things the same. There was a time when extra effort created visible change. You worked later for a few weeks, and something improved. You pushed yourself to learn a new skill, and doors opened. You followed up more aggressively, and opportunities appeared. The connection between action and outcome felt clear. Now, it's less obvious. You can put in the same energy, sometimes more, and the results barely shift. You answer faster, you volunteer more, you refine what you already do well, but the curve doesn't rise the way it used to. It's subtle. Your income might hold steady, your workload remains full, people still rely on you. On paper, everything looks stable, but stability isn't the same as responsiveness. There's a difference between a system that grows when you push it and one that simply absorbs your push without changing shape. You start to notice this in small moments. You finish a long week and expect a sense of progress, but what you feel instead is completion without advancement. You cleared everything, you handled everything, you improved nothing significant. That's not failure. It's maintenance reaching its limit. The strange part is how reasonable it all feels. You tell yourself this is adulthood. This is what consistency looks like. Not every season is explosive. Not every year is transformational. And that's true. But there's a quiet cost to extended flatness. When results no longer respond, motivation shifts, not dramatically, just slightly. You begin to measure your success by how well you keep things from falling apart, rather than how far you move them forward. You become protective instead of ambitious. You optimize your current position instead of testing its edges. It feels responsible. It feels safe, and safety is hard to argue with, but safety has a hidden timeline. 5 years of flat results can pass faster than you think, not because you were careless, but because nothing forced you to reevaluate the structure you were operating inside. You were busy the entire time. You were dependable. You were efficient. You were present. Yet the larger trajectory remained almost unchanged. This is the part most people miss. They assume that as long as effort remains high, progress will eventually follow. But effort applied inside a closed loop simply circulates. It doesn't escape. And because the loop feels normal, because it resembles responsibility, because it avoids risk, because it protects stability, you stay inside it. Nothing looks broken, which makes it harder to see that something has quietly stopped responding. The pattern is nearly visible now, but not fully. It still feels like circumstance. It still feels temporary. And that belief allows it to continue. At first, stability feels like success. You worked for it. You reduced uncertainty. You built routines. You made yourself reliable. The chaos of earlier years softened. Fewer surprises, fewer emergencies, fewer dramatic swings. That's not a small achievement. But stability has a second phase, and it doesn't announce when it begins. What once felt like momentum slowly becomes repetition. You wake up knowing exactly what the day will demand. You already understand the rhythm. You know which emails will arrive, which conversations will repeat, which problems will cycle back in a slightly different form. Nothing shocks you anymore. And while that sounds peaceful, it also means something else. You're no longer being stretched. The work fits you perfectly, too perfectly. When effort meets resistance, it grows. When effort meets familiarity, it maintains. Over time, your responsiveness decreases without you noticing. Not emotional responsiveness, structural responsiveness. You stop scanning for shifts. You stop experimenting with different approaches. You stop questioning whether the structure itself is still serving you. You respond within it. You optimize within it. You defend it because it works. But here's the connection that's easy to miss. Effort became routine. Routine created stability. Stability reduced friction. Reduced friction lowered responsiveness. And lowered responsiveness is why results stopped reacting. Nothing broke. The system just settled. When results no longer respond, the instinct is often to increase effort, work longer, answer faster, tighten execution. But if the structure itself is closed, more effort simply circulates faster inside the same boundaries. That's why you can feel exhausted and stagnant at the same time. You're not inactive, you're contained. Years can pass inside a well-contained life. It looks solid, it sounds mature, it appears responsible. But there's a measurable cost, not in drama, not in collapse, in time. 3 years of contained effort is 3 years of limited directional change. 10 years of it can redefine your ceiling without you ever consciously choosing that ceiling. This is the part where the pattern becomes visible, not because something failed, but because you realize that what once felt like forward motion has quietly turned into preservation. Stability isn't the enemy, but when it becomes the primary goal, when protecting what exists overrides expanding what's possible, stagnation follows naturally. No villain, no crisis, no mistake, just a slow settling. And once you see that connection, the earlier chapters make sense. The busy days, the small delays, the reliability, the maintenance, the flat results, they weren't separate problems. They were stages of the same progression. And that progression has been running quietly in the background the entire time.